Hey, what's up, guys? This is Cole with CJC Off-Road. Today, we're here to answer a question we get asked very frequently, and that is, what is the best riding diesel truck on the market? So in order to help answer this question, we're going to break this down into three basic categories: how these trucks ride stock, how these trucks ride modified, and how these trucks tow and haul. Let's dive into it and determine which truck comes out on top under each category between Ram, Ford, and GM. In terms of stock ride quality, the Ram 2500 really is going to run circles around the other options. And that really is due to the coil spring rear design that those trucks have. That is very unique to the Ram 2500 platform. That is only available in a coil sprung or rear air assist configuration. Those trucks really do ride better in stock configuration than the other options. That said, this really is more of a coil sprung versus leaf sprung argument here. And with that in mind, the Fords and the GM trucks are actually very similar in terms of ride quality out of the box. Ford really has done a lot of magic in the front ends of the newer 2023 and up trucks and how they ride in stock configuration. They actually do ride a lot better than they ever have, being that the truck has a solid front axle. GM having independent front suspension, very comparable actually to the Ford in terms of ride quality. Both those platforms having the leaf springs out back, they're actually very similar in terms of overall ride. The one outlier here I'd say is the Ram 3500. That is actually going to be a bit stiffer in terms of stock ride quality than the other options we've mentioned here. That said, later on in this video, there are benefits to having a stiffer stock suspension, which we'll go into in more detail. Now let's jump into what we specialize here at CJC Off-Road, and that is modified suspensions. So I'm going to break this down into two categories, one being budget and one being no expense spared. So to start, as far as the budget suspension, we decided to basically break this category down into $1,000 to $2,000 roughly spent on suspension upgrades. That is what we see as an entry-level quality suspension upgrade for any of these HD trucks. With that in mind, the Ram and Ford are going to be very similar in terms of performance upgrade for that dollar amount spent. You're going to see a dramatic ride quality improvement up front. You're going to essentially double the factory front suspension travel. Rear, that doesn't really leave much to change in the rear, which we'll get to in a little bit. GM, but the torsion bar front design, you can significantly improve how the truck rides on the street. Off-road capability is going to be still somewhat limited due to the limited travel and the independent suspension front end on these GM trucks. That said, we are still very impressed with how these trucks ride on road, and so all three, if on-road ride quality is a priority, can ride pretty darn good on road with a budget-oriented aftermarket suspension system. Now, to caveat all of this, when we say a budget suspension system, it is more of a leveling kit style setup, where you are changing front springs and shocks and maybe a few supporting components on the Rams and Fords. On the GMs, you're changing torsion keys, upper control arms, and shocks. Very simple modifications. These are not all-out suspension replacements, but being that this is one of the most popular segments in terms of aftermarket suspension, we really want to address the budget-oriented setups on these trucks. Now, the more exciting section to me, this is the no expense spared section. This is where you can really push the envelopes on what these trucks are capable of. And with that in mind, in terms of overall softness, nothing is going to compare to the Ram 2500. And again, that's due to the rear coil spring setup. Now, while in the more budget-oriented section, we mentioned that the Rams, you can get a significant upgrade by adding a softer leveling kit, softer front springs. That same thing applies to the rear coil springs on those trucks as well, and that when you replace the entire front and rear suspension on a Ram 2500 with soft ride components, there's just nothing on the market that rides as soft as those trucks do. That does come with a bit of a caveat that the rear coil springs don't support as much weight, which we'll get to in a little bit as we get into the final section of this video. But in terms of overall performance, for the dollar spent, if you're going all in, just trying to get the best of the best, it really is almost a tie between the Ram and the Ford platforms, with maybe a slight edge going to the Ford due to the Dominator system being allowed for the newer Ford trucks. In terms of overall travel, that Dominator system is just incredible for what you get for a bolt-on system. With these Ram and Ford bolt-on systems, you go from having a relatively stiff overall, it's an HD truck, to something that you can smash, whoops, truck that you can jump off the ground, and something doing a lot of things off-road you have no business doing in an HD truck. And that really is why we get so excited about a lot of the aftermarket options for these trucks. These trucks are just so capable with bolt-on upgrades. Now, in terms of the GM platforms, this is going to be a more controversial opinion. GMs, there are really cool coilover setups available for the GM platforms, but if you're retaining the overall factory architecture, right, so you're utilizing stock mounting points for the front suspension, you are still going to be fairly limited in terms of travel due to the steering and the CV design that those trucks use in their front ends. That said, you can still do great on fire roads. There are really cool options like King shocks and Diva rear springs where you can make the GMs really ride great on a fire road. But if you're trying to get the overall shots like we show with these trucks jumping in the air, pounding through whoops, the GM, in order to make that happen, you're going to have to cut off the whole factory front suspension and basically start from scratch with a custom long travel system. And those options do exist, but for the effort and the amount of money required, you're going to be less than half of that into a equivalent Ram or Ford setup for the front of those trucks. So keep that in mind as you're shopping these trucks. Not dogging the GM platform by any means. We love them. We think they're some of the best looking trucks in the market. When researching what HD truck to buy, we really do recommend being realistic with your expectations. And what we mean by that is most of us aren't jumping these trucks. Most of us aren't pounding whoops at 60 miles per hour. Most of us are looking for a truck we can take camping, tow a little bit with, and maybe take on some fire roads here and there. And to be honest, all three of the trucks we've been talking about in this video are more than capable of doing those things with some nice bolt-on modifications. That said, if you do plan on taking the truck down to Mexico for 5 days, never touching pavement, jumping the truck, things like that, the Ram and Ford just tend to offer more performance for the dollar spent when it comes to aftermarket performance suspension upgrades. Now, when it comes to towing and hauling, that is where we reach some caveats of the Ram 2500 platform. While that platform tends to be the softest overall and the best in terms of on-road and off-road ride quality, you do give up a lot in terms of towing, and that really is more of a coil sprung versus leaf sprung discussion. Coil springs are just more limited in terms of rear weight capacity on these trucks. You can band-aid that by adding airbags to a Ram 2500. We've done it on our own personal trucks, and that will allow you to tow with it, but you are still limited in terms of running a sliding camper or anything with constant load on those applications. Leaf springs just offer a lot more flexibility in terms of constant load. Out of the box, leaf sprung trucks tend to not require airbags as frequently as coil sprung rear trucks do. And for that reason, we recommend, if you will be pushing the limits in terms of weight capacity, to look at a leaf sprung truck. That would include the Rams, the Fords, and the GMs, all Ram 3500s, F250s, F350s, as well as GM 25 and 3500s are all equipped from the factory with rear leaf springs, and those do really well in terms of hauling. That said, as we discussed earlier in the video, you do give up some ride quality with the stiffer factory rear leaf springs on these trucks. Another thing we've noticed a lot recently is a lot of you guys are sliding really heavy, permanent in-bed campers in the back of these trucks. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it, coil sprung rear setups just do not work very well for those. We've tried all kinds of band-aids to make those work, and it's just a limitation of a coil sprung rear platform. Long story short, don't go with the coil platform if you'll be running a sliding camper. Go with either a Ram 3500, a Ford, or a GM. You'll thank us later for going that route. We understand we threw a lot of information at you guys, so if you guys have any questions on any of this, we understand that there is a lot to this process when researching a new truck purchase. And to be honest, we really enjoy kind of being a part of these builds with you guys and going along, so don't hesitate to either reach out and a comment on this YouTube channel, to give us a call, or to shoot us an email. We're more than happy to help you guys throughout that process. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys want other questions answered, feel free to let us know. We'd be happy to put together some content for you guys. Thank you so much.